Richard Branson is a legend in the business world. He is the epitome of risk-taking, determination, and creativity, and he has inspired countless entrepreneurs to pursue their own dreams. From starting his first record store to founding Virgin Group, Branson has lived a life of excitement and adventure, and his story is one of true success against all odds. In this video, you'll learn about the man behind the Virgin brand and how he turned his unique combination of qualities into a business empire. From his daring rescue mission to Baghdad during the Gulf War to his journey across the Pacific in a hot air balloon, Branson's life is filled with incredible stories that will captivate and inspire you. You'll also discover the secrets to his success, from how he was able to buy an island for a fraction of its original price to his fearless approach to business. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or just someone looking for a little inspiration, this video is a must-watch. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired by the life and adventures of the self-made billionaire, Richard Branson. You'll come away with a new appreciation for the power of imagination, determination, and a willingness to take risks in pursuit of your dreams. Chapter 1. Branson was born into a family of adventurers, where pushing limits and testing one's boundaries were the norm. From a young age, he was challenged by his mother and aunt to prove his mettle. On a family holiday in Devon, Branson was bet 10 shillings that he couldn't learn to swim in 2 weeks. Despite hours of practice, he failed to conquer the waves. But this defeat was just the beginning of Branson's story. During the long car journey home, he spotted a river and asked his father to stop the car. Without hesitation, he jumped into the water and began to sink. But with determination and grit, Branson kicked his way to the surface and eventually made his way to the middle of the current. His family cheered and clapped as his aunt waved the 10-shilling note in triumph. As Branson emerged from the water, his father gave him a soaking wet embrace. The sight of his son diving headfirst into the stream had greatly unnerved him, and he couldn't resist jumping in after him. This moment marked the beginning of Branson's lifelong quest to test his limits and push the boundaries of what was possible. Through his adventures, he inspired generations to take on challenges, conquer fears, and never give up. Chapter 2. Branson had always struggled academically, but he refused to let that define him. Instead, he channeled his energy into something he was passionate about, pop culture. With his friend Johnny Gems, he founded the magazine, Student, which quickly became a celebration of all things student culture and contemporary issues. But getting the magazine off the ground was not without its challenges. Finding the money to publish it was one of their biggest obstacles. However, Branson's quick thinking and determination proved to be their saving grace. He managed to secure advertising space by convincing National Westminster Bank that Lloyds Bank had already taken out an ad. With the publication of the first issue, Branson and Johnny's focus shifted from schoolwork to the magazine. They left university and moved into a tiny basement in London, where they edited and distributed the magazine with the help of fellow students. Despite Branson's dyslexia, he dedicated more time to editing and writing for the magazine than his coursework. As the magazine gained traction, Branson and Johnny's ambitions grew. They wanted to report on international events and approached the Daily Mirror with a proposal to send one of their staff to cover the wars in Biafra and Vietnam. The proposal was a success, and the magazine was able to send one of their reporters to both countries. But Student was not just about politics, it was also deeply involved in the music scene. The magazine featured exclusive interviews with legendary musicians like Keith Richards, John Lennon, and Yoko Ono, and reported on club events and concerts. Branson's struggles with academics may have held him back in university, but they couldn't stop him from pursuing his passion and making a mark in the world of pop culture. Chapter 3. Branson had a vision, a dream to revolutionize the music industry by providing an alternative to the traditional way of buying records. As he dug deeper into the world of music, he discovered that people were paying a premium for records in large stores. He saw an opportunity to change that, and that's when Virgin Mail Order was born. Together with the student staff, they came up with a creative name that would catch the eye of their target audience. The name, Virgin, symbolized their innocence in business, but they were far from inexperienced. They placed an ad in the last issue of Student, and the response was overwhelming. Orders and inquiries came pouring in, providing the capital they needed to buy records and start the venture. Branson teamed up with his childhood friend and co-contributor Nick, who became their accountant. They worked together to make a deal with a local record shop and obtain records directly from the record companies, enabling them to sell records at a discount. The company flourished in the 1970s, and their unique mail-order system was a huge success. However, a potential disaster struck in January 1971, when the post office went on strike. This meant that Virgin customers were unable to send checks and receive records, putting the company's future in jeopardy. But Branson and Nick were determined to overcome this challenge, and their quick thinking and resourcefulness saved the day. They found a way to keep the business running, and Virgin Mail Order continued to grow and expand, becoming the cornerstone of the Virgin Group. Chapter 4. Branson and his team at Virgin Mail Order had a vision for their record stores, to create a welcoming atmosphere where customers could not only buy records but also exchange views on their music interests. However, their success became a double-edged sword when their relaxed lifestyle concept proved to be too much of a draw and people started hanging out in the stores without actually buying anything. Desperate to get sales back on track, the team took action. They installed brighter lights and moved the counters and cash registers closer to the windows to give the stores a more commercial feel. It worked. After just a few months, sales had recovered and Virgin's record stores were once again the place to be for music lovers. The postal strike that forced Virgin to open their own record store ended up being a blessing in disguise. Their unique approach to retail and commitment to creating a welcoming atmosphere had taken the industry by storm and allowed them to grow from a mail-order business to a successful chain of record stores. Branson's vision, combined with his charm and business savvy, had made Virgin a household name and a hub for music lovers everywhere. Chapter 5. The year was 1971, and the music industry was lacking the creativity and passion that once thrived in the 1960s. Richard Branson, a young man with big dreams and an entrepreneurial spirit, saw an opportunity to shake things up. He wanted to provide a space for musicians to be free from the formalities of overbooked recording studios and to bring excitement back to the industry. Branson set his sights on a 17th-century manor, the perfect location for his vision of a recording studio. The only issue was the asking price of £30,000, which seemed unattainable for a young man like Branson. But with determination and some clever financial maneuvering, he was able to secure a mortgage from the British bank Coutts and a loan from his aunt. And so, the Virgin Manor was born. Branson didn't stop there. He founded a record label, Virgin Records, which allowed the company to control every aspect of the music-making process. From recording to publishing and releasing, they were able to bring a new level of excitement to the industry. Their first big break came with the signing of Mike Oldfield and the release of his album, Tubular Bells. The record was an instant success, selling over 13 million copies and propelling Virgin into the stratosphere of the music world. Branson's dream had become a reality, and Virgin's position in the music industry was secure for years to come. Chapter 6. In the wild and rebellious world of punk music in the 1970s, Richard Branson's Virgin Records was in search of its next big act. The label was struggling, with all of its artists losing them money. But then, the opportunity of a lifetime presented itself. Malcolm McLaren, the manager of the infamous Sex Pistols, signed the band to Virgin, hoping they would get dropped due to their outrageous behavior just as they had with EMI and A&M. However, Branson had other plans. He was determined to make this partnership work, despite the threats and legal challenges that came with promoting a band known for causing chaos and controversy. Chapter 7. Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Music, was in New York for a reason that would change his life forever. He was there to be close to Joan, his future wife, who was going through a divorce. The question of the origin of his company's name had come up, and Branson realized that he might as well visit the Virgin Islands while he was in the area. Branson heard that expressing interest in buying an island would get him the VIP treatment. So, he contacted an estate agent, posing as someone looking for a retreat for Virgin Music's artists to relax and record. Joan and Branson were flown to the islands and were put up in a villa by the agent. They were shown Necker Island, a remote and beautiful tropical paradise, and Branson asked for the price, a staggering £3 million. Branson, having nothing to lose, made an offer of £150,000, which got him thrown out of the villa. But he soon learned that the owner of Necker Island, a British lord, needed to make a quick sale to finance another building, which would cost him £200,000. Branson upped his offer to £175,000 and the agreement was settled at £180,000. He had just bought a beautiful tropical island for a fraction of its asking price. The purchase of Necker Island was just the beginning. It was on the Virgin Islands that Branson set up his next venture, Virgin Airways. When his flight back to Puerto Rico was cancelled, he chartered a plane for $2,000 and, on a blackboard, wrote, "Virgin Airways, $39 single flight to Puerto Rico." This simple act of resourcefulness and entrepreneurship would eventually lead to the establishment of one of the largest airlines in the world. From trying to bag himself a free holiday, Branson had ended up buying a beautiful tropical island and starting a new venture. It was a stroke of luck and a display of Branson's clever negotiating skills that would pay off in the long run. Chapter 8. In the late 1970s, Virgin Records was struggling to stay afloat with a loss of £900,000. Despite the dire financial situation, the company's fearless leader, Sir Richard Branson, took a bold gamble by giving the green light to sign new, unknown artists such as Simple Minds, The Human League, and Phil Collins. This move defied the wisdom of the financial director, who saw Virgin throwing money at artists with no guarantee of success. The financial director eventually sold his 40% share of the company to Branson, making him the sole owner of a company that seemed on the brink of collapse. But little did anyone know, the arrival of the compact disc, CD, would change everything. CDs became a hit, and people started buying albums they already owned on vinyl, giving Virgin the opportunity to resell their back catalog on CDs. Mike Oldfield's first record was a huge success on CD, restoring the company's cash balance. Branson's faith in his musical scout and advisor, Simon Draper, also paid off as nearly all the bands that he had signed became wildly popular. The Human League's third album, Dare, was a massive hit, reaching #1 on the British charts and selling 1 million copies in Britain and 3 million worldwide. The roster of young artists signed by Virgin continued to grow and proved to be incredibly successful. Phil Collins, Boy George and Culture Club, Simple Minds, XTC, and Heaven 17 all became huge names in the music industry. With the unprecedented success of their artists and the demand for CDs, Virgin Records became the undisputed independent label with a £2 million profit in 1982 on sales of £50 million and an incredible £11 million profit in 1983. Branson's bold move to sign unknown artists and embrace the CD revolution had transformed Virgin Records into a powerhouse in the music industry. Chapter 9. Richard Branson, the daring entrepreneur behind Virgin Records, was not content with just shaking up the music industry. In 1984, he set his sights on the skies. Despite opposition from his senior management, Branson saw the potential in a transatlantic airline and agreed to lease a jumbo from Boeing for 1 year. But the road to getting Virgin Airways off the ground was far from smooth. First, there was the matter of obtaining the necessary flight permits. Then, a test flight turned disastrous when the uninsured plane flew into a flock of birds, causing one of the engines to explode. The first commercial flight was just 2 days away, and Branson was faced with the daunting task of acquiring a new engine and a license, all at a cost of £600,000 that exceeded Virgin's £3 million overdraft. As the bank refused to extend the overdraft, Virgin was on the brink of insolvency. Branson scrambled to collect money from his overseas stores, just enough to keep Virgin Airways operating. But his quick thinking paid off. Under his leadership, the airline became legitimate and successful, eventually becoming one of the biggest names in the industry. Branson, just 33 years old, had once again proven his entrepreneurial prowess, defying all odds to keep his dream of a transatlantic airline alive. Chapter 10. Branson, a risk-taker and a visionary, had his sights set on making a name for himself and his businesses. So when Ted Tolman approached him with the opportunity to sponsor a catamaran to cross the Atlantic and beat the world record, Branson saw it as a chance to make a statement. He teamed up with Shea Blyth, a round-the-world yachtsman, and set off on their journey. 3 days into the voyage, the unimaginable happened. The crew was hit by a storm and the Virgin Challenger sank. Branson and his team were left adrift at sea on a life raft, eventually rescued by a passing cruise ship. It was on that boat that Branson received the news of his newborn son, yet even in the face of such adversity, he refused to give up. Determined to win the Blue Ribbon Trophy, Branson and Shea decided to build a single-hulled boat, the Virgin Atlantic Challenger II, and set off on their second attempt. However, another setback occurred when the fuel pump filters became clogged, causing the engine to choke. With no chance of reaching England in time to beat the record, Branson refused to give up. He reached out to Downing Street and spoke to the right people, eventually securing a new set of filters dropped by an RAF plane. With the new filters in place, the Virgin Atlantic Challenger II raced across the Atlantic, reaching England in 3 days, 8 hours, and 31 minutes, a new world record. Branson's determination, resourcefulness and quick thinking, in the face of such severe adversities, paid off. He had succeeded in sailing across the Atlantic in record time, and his name was forever etched in history. Chapter 11. The Kuwait War had the world on edge, but one man refused to sit idly by while people suffered. That man was Richard Branson, the fearless entrepreneur who had made a name for himself with his adventures and business ventures. One day, as Branson was about to take his children to school, his phone rang. It was Queen Noor of Jordan, a dear friend and ally in times of need. Over 150,000 refugees had fled from Iraq to Jordan, and the government was in dire need of blankets and supplies to prevent a catastrophe. Branson and his team sprang into action, reaching out to the Red Cross, the Foreign Office, and UNICEF to gather 30,000 blankets and tons of rice. They decided to remove all the seats from a Boeing 747 and load it with over 40,000 blankets, medical supplies, and rice. On their return trip, they also rescued British nationals who were stranded in Jordan. But there were still British hostages detained in Baghdad, and Branson wouldn't rest until they were free. He called upon his friendship with the King of Jordan to negotiate a deal with Saddam Hussein. In exchange for medical supplies, Hussein agreed to release all the children, women, and sick men. On October 23, Branson and a volunteer Virgin crew set off for Baghdad, entering the world's most dangerous airspace on a commercial plane. Despite the risk, they arrived safely and were able to take most of the hostages with them. Though they were forced to leave the men behind, their bravery and determination inspired the world and solidified Branson's reputation as a true humanitarian. Chapter 12. In January 1990, Richard Branson and Per Lindstrand set out to conquer the Pacific in a hot air balloon. It was a daring feat, one that would secure the world record for fastest speed and the first successful crossing of the Pacific by balloon. But their journey was far from smooth. Just 7 hours into their trip, a mechanical failure caused them to drop 2 full fuel tanks, leaving them with just half of the fuel needed to cross 6,000 miles. The loss of communication with their control center and a fire on board the balloon added to their troubles. Despite the challenges, Branson and Lindstrand remained calm and quick thinking. They took the balloon up to 40,000 feet to extinguish the fire and regained communication with the control center. The jet stream had pivoted, however, and the pair was faced with the daunting prospect of being blown back to Japan. But, with their unwavering spirit and determination, Branson and Lindstrand managed to navigate towards another stream heading north towards the Arctic. After almost 48 hours in the air, they safely landed in Canada, 3,000 miles from their original destination. They had flown further and at a faster average speed than anyone ever before, making history in the process. It was a journey of immense bravery, determination and ingenuity. Despite facing numerous obstacles, Branson and Lindstrand succeeded in their goal and proved that with a strong will and a fearless spirit, anything is possible. Chapter 13. In the highly competitive world of aviation, Branson and his Virgin Airways were making waves and challenging the established player, British Airways. However, BA was not content with simply competing on a level playing field, instead resorting to underhanded tactics to bring Branson down. They hacked into Virgin's database, contacted customers with false information about canceled flights, and even hired private detectives to dig up dirt on Branson and his company. Despite all the evidence pointing to BA's wrongdoing, officials were reluctant to see them as anything more than hard-nosed competitors. But when Branson and his team were handed a hard drive containing logs of conversations between top BA executives, it became clear that there was a deliberate effort to discredit Virgin. With this evidence in hand, Branson took BA to court, leading to a historic settlement. BA had to pay out a substantial sum in compensation, make a public apology, and admit to their guilt. It was a victory for Branson and a warning to any companies that may have thought of resorting to dirty tricks to win in business. Summary: starting a business shouldn't be all about boring forms and calculations, it should be about your passion. So, you gotta find a field or topic that lights your fire and gather a team of passionate peeps who can challenge you and keep you on your toes. Show yourself off to investors in the best way possible, stay legal, and don't forget about your personal life. That's the secret to long-term success, a balance of hard work and happiness. Now for the actionable advice. If you're working with bigger companies and it's not working out, it's time to cut ties. Don't waste your time waiting for them to catch up, you gotta move forward on your own. Collaborating with big organizations can be tricky, so proceed with caution. Just remember, big companies are often slower than you, so don't hold yourself back waiting for them.